A very warm welcome to you as you join us on today's episode of Tax Matters. My name is Olumuyiwa Matuluko. We begin by welcoming on board the new members of the Federal Executive Council, particularly the returning Minister of Finance, Mrs. Zainab Ahmed. It's becoming very obvious that government needs more revenue in the face of the daunting economic challenges and the fact that the government is under pressure to deliver the dividends of democracy to the populace. At the meeting that was held, the meeting of the National Economic Council held on Thursday, the 22nd, a day after the minister resumed, it came to the public domain that the government is now asking the states to repay the bailout funds. They were called bailout funds at the onset. Now they are calling them loan. And that means that government is under pressure to raise more money. Against this background, we have a guest in the studio, the man that is at the helm of affairs when you talk about revenue generation, the number one taxman in Nigeria, the number one taxman in Africa, Babatunde Fowler. Mr. Fowler, welcome to Tax Matters.
Thank you for having me.
Before the retreat and the swearing of the ministers, the media was awash with what was called a query served on you by the Chief of Staff to the President. Were you queried?
Well, I'm not a student of the English language, but when you use the word query, I believe it implies that something wrong has been done. I think what basically happened was that the Office of the Chief of Staff wanted to get clarification on revenue figures, and I'd also like to let the public understand that we do have two major categories of revenue. We have revenue from the oil sector, and we have what we call the non-oil tax revenue. On the oil tax revenue, we do not get any cost of collection. I think mainly because it's beyond our control, and it's dependent on the number of barrels of oil that are produced and sold, and also the international price of oil. What we do in that area is that we also monitor to ensure that adequate taxes are being paid, which we have done, and we've also highlighted to government outstanding taxes that are due on the oil revenue. However, on the non-oil revenue, which I can call it almost absolute control on, of course, during the period it has grown significantly. In 2018, as a combined revenue figure, we generated the highest revenue in the history of the country, which was at 5.32 trillion, and out of that, 53.7% was from the non-oil sector. Also during that same period, the VAT hit 1.1 trillion, the highest, and of course, stamp duty was the highest. So if you look at the figures in the non-oil sector, which we have control on, certainly revenues were much higher. Now, in terms of information that was being requested for, on a monthly basis and indeed a quarterly basis, we do submit reports to the chairman of the Economic Council, which is the vice president. We submit reports to the Minister of Finance, to the Minister of Budget, to the DG of Budget, and we also send copies to the Senate President and the Speaker. And when we have chairman of the Finance Committee in the Senate and the House of Representatives, to also get monthly reports as to how well we're doing. So I think it was more of a clarification to provide governments with more information on the performances, and also at the same time to let them realize, in quotes, the growth, especially in the non-oil sector.
The point was made about comparing the years that you've been at the helm of affairs, 2015, August to date?
No. I'll say it should be 2016 to 2018. Good. Because we did join at the end of August. Good. So, yes.
There was a comparison made between those years and the preceding years. Did you do better? Would you say you did better?
Well, of course. The initial period, oil revenue accounted, if I remember right, for about 59% of the revenue. And of course, now the oil sector is accounting for 46%. So certainly we're doing much better. And of course, in absolute terms, the amount generated from CIT, corporate income tax, the amount generated from VAT, the amount generated from stamp duty during the period was certainly higher than the amounts generated during that period. The only difference was that the oil revenue during that period was higher than the oil revenue during this latter period, which of course is beyond our control. It has to do with the number of barrels of oil produced and sold, and of course international market rates.
We must commend you actually, because if you are able to collect a higher percentage from non-oil taxes, it means that yes, you are really doing your job.
Or maybe let me put it in perspective that a lot of people understand. During that 3-year period, on a global budget basis, we're able to achieve 8% of budget.
Good, good, good. Now, you look at companies income tax, you look at value-added tax. If you look at the trend, what would you attribute your success to? We always make this point about the ICT initiatives of the FIRS. That's quite commendable, making life easier for the taxpayer. What would you attribute your success to?
Well, I think it's a combination of issues. And if you talk to a tax administrator in Nigeria, the number one thing they talk about is the political will, meaning that the support you get from your employer or from government, either at the federal or the state level. Let me first of all, we do have tremendous support, political will from the presidency, which enables us to carry out our functions without interference. And then second, of course, we can say that we have deployed technology whereby we can, for once, say we have what we call a consolidated tax database for the whole country, which has all individuals and all corporate taxpayers in it, as long as you're registered. Those who are not registered are out of that tax box. And that's why we came up with an enforcement strategy, which is popularly known in the media as the lien on bank accounts. We have over 40,000 of those that we put liens on. Those that had banking turnover of a minimum of 100 million per annum for 3 years, and those that had a minimum of 1 billion naira banking turnover.
1 billion?
Yes.
And they are not filing returns?
Not filing returns.
Not paying?
Not paying. But out of that, over 40,000 plus, 3,000 of them have paid over 82 billion to the government coffers in the last 60 days. And I believe that with the information that we did put in the papers on Monday and Tuesday, which is a link, so those who have their accounts on lien can click a button and see that their accounts have been put on a hold by government. And also we let them understand what the law basically says, or the act says that if you own a company, or you're a principal officer, a chairman, a director, a manager, a secretary of that company that's owing taxes, it will be deemed as if you yourself personally owe those taxes. And we have published it to let people understand that if they don't come forward, that we will be going after them in their personal capacities.
Actually, you went ahead of us. We were going to talk about the public notice that came out on Monday. And we did click on the link and found that 19,000 plus companies are involved. How come such a huge number escaped the tax net in the first place?
Well, let me first of all explain why we have this huge number. When this government came into office, I think it was, or it is, a listening government. They gave them the opportunity to come forward on their own. In 2016, before VADES, we had a tax amnesty, which we waived interest and penalty for all that came forward. During that period, a little over 3,000 came forward, and they paid about 92 billion. Thereafter, shortly after that, we launched VADES with the Minister of Finance, which also included individuals. And globally, we had a declared assessments equally of almost the same figure of 92 billion, out of which 72 billion has been paid so far. Now, also during that period, the tax database increased from 10 million to 20 million. And I believe some of the high net worth operators of these accounts maybe thought that nothing would happen if they didn't come out. But during that period where we give them the opportunity to come forward on their own, our hands are sort of tied. I mean, if government says, come forward and we're giving you 6 months or 9 months, we can't start enforcing people, yes. And so immediately that VAIDS expired, we did have a meeting with stakeholders to let them understand that we do have information and that we'll be processing with a lien on their bank accounts. And that is exactly what we have started.
I have a schoolmate who likes to say, Messi has died. Now that Messi has died, what are you going to do to those companies?
Well, what the Act actually does say is that apart from putting a lien on those accounts, the balances that are deemed to be tax liabilities should be swept straight to the Federation accounts. And that is the next step that we'll take. We are, I believe, part of a listening government, a government that would give the citizens and the business community the opportunity to come and do the right thing. Because if this had happened in any European or American country, I can assure you that those operators will be behind bars by now. But I think letting people realize that we do have information, we do have the names of the owners of these accounts, and letting them understand the law. Because sometimes people who do not understand the implications of what they're doing, believing that there are limited consequences or no consequences at all, tend to behave this way. So I think now the Nigerian public realizes the consequences, and those people who are in the lower income group, those who work in government organizations where the taxes are deducted directly from their income, will now feel better that they're not left just to suffer the burden, or those compliant companies within the business sector who are feeling shortchanged. When I say shortchanged, by their competitors not paying taxes, will now realize that everyone has a level playing field when it comes to the payment of taxes.
Are you aware that as individuals, there can be a distinction made between me and my company? When you say the individuals linked to these companies are liable, do you have any cover under the law?
That's what I said in the publication. If you open that publication,
no,
if you open that publication, I'll let you read the section. We stated the section of the Act, and the last part of it says it will be deemed as if they themselves in their personal account.
Section 49, subsection 2, A to D of that Act, you can produce to enforce the payment of the said tax against all the directors, managers, secretaries, and every other person concerned in the management of the companies, and require the said tax from such persons without further notice.
That's right.
Messi has died. Let's go back to the beginning. The government needs money. You are the revenue generator, number one revenue generator. So, what are you going to do at the FRS to come to the rescue?
Well, we're going to continue to expand the tax net. I had said on July 1st, when we launched the consolidated tax database, that we're in talks with the Central Bank of Nigeria. And of course, during the retreat with the ministers, I did have a discussion with the CBN governor. They had released 2 million. We have another 33 million BVNs that will be released to us shortly. And also those on the National Identity Management System will also be releasing to us information of the individuals who have applied to our ID cards. So hopefully, before the end of September, that tax database should grow from 20 million to close to 45 million. And that certainly would have an impact on revenue, both at the federal and the state levels.
There's another public notice that came out before the one we just spoke about. And that one is talking about, this one is talking about deductions at source of withholding tax and VAT from companies that act as agents, as distributors, as retailers. About 4 episodes ago on the program, we featured a seminar that was organized by the FRS. And we remember that most of those people in this category were talking about the fact that their VAT is deducted at source by their principals. Let's give an example. If I'm a wholesaler or a small holder selling on behalf of a brewery, the breweries will deduct VAT at source, because when I want to sell at my shop, it's not likely that I'll be able to charge VAT, except those who sell in organized setups like hotels. So what do you want from these small holders?
Okay, let me first of all explain when you say small businesses. Our focus is on having a fair, level playing field for everybody, big, medium, and small. But let me first of all explain the concept of VAT. VAT is a tax that doesn't stop at one location. It's like a train, picks up people at different points along the way. So if, for example, your pen you're holding, you want to sell it to me for 10 naira, you charge me VAT on this pen, and I sell it to the next person for 8 or 9 or 12 naira, I charge him VAT. And he sells it to the next person, it also pays VAT.
It's multi-stage.
Exactly. And VAT is the largest tax growing type across the globe. And the essence of VAT basically is to make sure that as you have the ability to consume, you also pay for that privilege you have of consumption. Now, in Nigeria, we've got certain items that are VAT exempt. Items that everybody requires, whether you're rich, medium, or poor, you require it. Everybody requires food. Because, I mean, food has nothing to do with, people like to call it class. Everybody requires education. Everybody requires healthcare. All those things are VAT exempt, all right? But you gave an example. If you go to the market and you want to buy your chicken, buy your meat, buy your drinks, and take it home, you don't pay VAT. But if you go to a restaurant where a chef has added value, has prepared your rice, prepared your chicken, and brings you a drink, then you pay VAT on that consumption. Same with a hotel. You have a home, you go to your house, you sleep in your bedroom, there's no VAT. But you go and get a room in a hotel, you're charged VAT. Now, the issue here when people are talking about the rates of VAT, we still charge one of the lowest in the world. And if you look at it this way, if you're thirsty and you buy a bottle of Coca-Cola, cold Coca-Cola on the streets, in the markets, and you pay 100 naira, but you decide to go to Eco Hotel and buy the same bottle of Coca-Cola, they'll charge you 500 naira. So the choice when it comes to the payment of VAT is yours as a consumer.
So the summary of that is that because of the nature of VAT, which is multi-stage, it's not enough that that beverage company, I don't want to mention names, that brewery has collected VAT. The final consumer or the people at the different cities still have to pay.
Let me go on that level. Where you're a major distributor for Nigerian breweries, for example, and for whatever reason, they show us that they have been charged VAT. At that point, they are covered.
Because they give you fixed prices to sell.
No, it doesn't matter whether they give you fixed prices to sell or not. Let me give you, you're using brews. Let me give you another example.
Okay.
If you're given a contract to supply me diesel.
Good.
If I went to the petrol station and I bought diesel myself, I'll not pay VAT.
It's a fixed price.
If I give a contract to supply me diesel, there'll be VAT, there'll be withholding tax.
That is true.
Exactly. So that's the same. But in the case of the breweries, for example, if the major distributor is charged VAT when he buys his product for whatever reason, that VAT is remitted to government. When he's selling it to the next person, he's expected to charge VAT and also remit it because they're all consumption tax. But no level of business will be charged VAT twice. And we've got to understand that VAT is not the headache, in quote, of the person who is selling. It's the headache of the person who is buying.
Still on VAT, there's this one about charging VAT on online transactions.
Now, that is something that we have overlooked. It's something that is in discussion across the globe, worldwide. It's something that is fast becoming an issue that certain countries are making what I'll call individual arrangements not to lose revenue. And I'll give a little example. If you walk into a shop and you buy a television today, you pay VAT. But if you sit at home and you buy that same TV online from, I don't want to mention their names, they have so many online sellers. You buy the same TV and you don't pay VAT. So is that fair? Is that proper? It's not, exactly. So what we're saying is that we're giving people time to adjust to the issue of tax payments and the laws. And I believe that by next year latest, we will appoint, as long as I get the buy-in of the Minister of Finance and other stakeholders, that people who make purchases online, either locally or internationally, they will be subject to VAT. And if they do it through the banking system, the banks will become the agents to deduct the 5% VAT and remit to government.
You have made a statement, locally or internationally.
That's right. Because you have
We're going to ask, how are you going to be able to get that VAT? How are you going to track those transactions? But now that you're talking about local and international, maybe it's going to be easier with local transactions. How are you going to do it with international transactions?
Very simple. We all operate within the law. I believe so.
Yes.
If you want to make a purchase abroad, you go to your bank and you say remit $10 to country A or country B for the purchase of this product or for the payment of this service. At the time the bank is remitting your $10, they'll take the 5% from government.
So the banks will be your agents.
That's right.
In this regard, I mean, online VAT on local on online transactions. The banks will be the collectors.
That's right.
Okay, we are rounding up. You made 5.3 trillion in 2018. 5.32, and we know there's a target of 8 trillion. Was that your own target or government target?
Well, when you asked me whether it was my own target or government target, let me backtrack a little bit. When you're given a budget is supposed to challenge you.
Yes.
If you achieve 100% of your budget, very good. But if you consistently achieve 100%, then there's a problem with the budget. Second, in giving us that budget, I can say that the budget was well thought out, and I did highlight something to you earlier on, that we had done an audit whereby certain sectors, especially in the oil sector, had outstanding tax liabilities not paid. Now, if those tax liabilities are paid, I can assure you that that 8.9 trillion budget will be achieved. Now, on the non-oil sector, for which we have full control, I can safely tell you that we'll be close to 100% on that. So budgets are made to challenge. Budgets are made to ensure that the full potential is achieved in carrying out whatever assignment you're given. So it's a budget that is approved by the National Assembly. The National Assembly has the right to increase or decrease, and based on what is approved, we'll accept it as such and work towards achieving it.
We wish you the best of luck in that regard. You have our full support. We pray for you, and we know that at the end of the year, this is the end of August, we'll have cause to celebrate. Thank you very much for coming on to the program,
Thanks
sir.
for having me.
Yes, sir.